PixMix is brought to you by the Arun Meta Show on Liberated Syndication and youtube.com/Arun Meta Show, and is also in association with the Old School Lane podcast.
PixMix is brought to you by oldschoollane.blogspot.com and is associated with the Arun Meta Show.
Hello and welcome to PixMix with Arun
and Patricia.
Bonjour, mademoiselle.
Thank you, monsieur. Or should I? Yeah, so thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. And that pretty much just tells you about what the random wheel has given us for today's episode of PixMix.
And you can tell which one of us is the European.
Yes, I am clearly not European whatsoever.
Yeah, I have to say, when this came up on the random wheel, my heart just leapt up into the clouds. I really, utterly, and really love this film. And this is one of the reasons I wanted to do PixMix, because I'm going to enjoy talking about this film.
Yes, and considering though what we had to go throughout these last two episodes of PixMix, this is something we really needed. So thank you, Random Wheel.
Les rêves des amoureux sont comme le bon vin. Ils donnent de la joie ou bien du chagrin.
What can we say about Ratatouille, which isn't just gleaming with gold? This film is romantic, this film is funny, this film has characters we love, and this film has a protagonist we can always root for, no matter whereabouts he's standing in the film. And it's just, everything about this, I think, is definitely going to be, cased in gold. I think what we have to say about this. Absolutely spectacular.
Absolutely. This is a good example on how to do a cowardly and doofy protagonist. Take notes, Arlo.
Okay, so let's start off by talking about the short. And the short was lifted, and I think to put it in kind of like the easiest way to describe it, it's basically an alien taking a driving test.
Yeah, pretty much so. It's as basic as you can get with a Pixar short. It's really nice, I have to say. Definitely not one of my favorites, but it's pretty decent nonetheless.
Yeah. So I really liked how he's trying to get trying to have the instructor trying to drive him, and so he's surrounded by all these millions of switches. And, in a way you kind of sympathize with him, because let me safely say that if I had a console like that, I can't say, not to say that, so the Arun Meta Show console doesn't look like that. It does have loads of knobs and switches and stuff, but, so in a way I kind of sympathize with him, but, the amount, trying to drive a spaceship like that, I would ultimately struggle, and I don't even think I'd get past the theory, let alone the practical. So
yeah, that is true. It's like, if you were playing Steel Battalion for the first time on the original Microsoft Xbox or Xbox 360, and you are saying, okay, you're going to control this huge, gigantic tank. You have this controller that has like 30 buttons and knobs and switches. Control it. And you're like, what am I supposed to do? And it's just incredibly confusing. But if you get the hang of it, it's somewhat decent. But yeah, you can definitely relate to this character because he's just trying to know the know-abouts of a spaceship, trying to learn how to drive. And it's actually kind of SpongeBob-esque when he takes his driving test with Mrs. Puff.
Mm-hmm. So the young alien is called Stu, and the driving instructor is the alien instructor is called Mr. B, and he gives a stoic expression throughout the entire skit, and it gets to the point where he does bring in the. So what they're trying to do is there's a human inside the this country house, and they're trying to abduct him, and it doesn't go very well because he bashes him into walls. He gets bashed all around the house, and even though he's still asleep, and he does eventually manage to get him inside the ship, but then clumsily drops him during his moment moment of arrogance, saying that he finally did it, to the point where Mr. B has to leap into the rescue to stop him from falling to his death. And then he basically puts the whole house back together, and it's poor little Stu is very downbeat about it. But as a token of I guess not make him feel so useless, he gives him control of the ship, and he crashes it into the floor. So. Yeah, they whatever they did with this, they did everything with it, and so it was a really good way to start, I think, to get us all excited for Ratatouille. So, very good short.
Definitely. It's definitely a nice leadway into the main attraction, as opposed to the short being the best thing about it, and then the movie is just a complete bore.
Mm-hmm. So that brings us into Ratatouille, and we start off with the opening, which is basically some dialogue of, so you get this TV coming up, basically setting the premise that we're in France, it has the best food in the world, and no one is better than Augustus Cousteau, who is a well-renowned 5-star chef. Now, there is an error here, because there is no such thing as a 5-star restaurant. For those of you who do not know, Michelin stars only go up to 3, I believe. So, in this world, there are 5-star restaurants apparently, and Augustus Cousteau owns one of them. So, we'll go with that. And so,
hey, if we can, suspend our disbelief with cars that are in their own universe and dinosaur farmers, I think that 5-star restaurants is the least of our worries.
Yes, but this is like one of the very few, problems with the film. But that's just me being picky. So that's just me. But anyway, we're introduced to Augustus Cousteau, and he's a very young budding chef. And we're also introduced to, I guess we would say, the villain of the film, which is Anton Ego, who is a very dastardly food critic. And so while Augustus Cousteau believes that anyone can cook, and even writes a book to that matter, Anton Ego doesn't believe anyone can do it, and that sort of sets the premise of the film. And I think it was a very good setup, I must say, for the beginning before we get the title of the film. And so, yeah.
Yes, absolutely, because he's not exactly a villain, but he's sort of an obstacle to overcome. And, especially nowadays with critics, they're always picky. They're always looking at details and saying that is unacceptable. So because we are in a society where critics are everywhere, video game critics, movie critics, TV show critics, what have you, we can definitely relate to when Linguini is preparing the food for the critic, which we'll discuss about much later in the end. But yeah, it's definitely gives a nice little introduction to a character that we do know is going to be coming back, as opposed to like showing up completely out of nowhere and then they were the immediate bad guy.
Mm-hmm. So the movie then shifts to Remy, who is a Parisian rat who lives in an attic in a French country home owned by an old woman, and his brother Emile, and also led by his father Django. Remy is gifted with his sense of smell, which becomes even more amazing because he manages to uncover rat poison and saves his entire family of being basically poisoned to death. So that leaves Django to give him a job where he is then basically charged to make sure that all food and garbage is all clean. So I think this is very interesting because it brings in the protagonist into it makes him realize he's in a situation where he has to basically abide by his father's rules, and he has to basically abide by his father's ways. And he's sort of kind of rebelling against that, as as sons do with their fathers, and also with their families as well. So I think they put Remy in a very relatable situation, and that was a very good way to go.
Yeah, absolutely. Considering that they're a group of rats, and they mostly stick together because they are able to get food together. They're able to live in the same location. So they have to abide by a set of rules in which you have to do it this way, or else you're going to be breaking tradition, or you're going to get caught by humans. And as we've seen later in a scene in which it does become really apparent that they have to be really extra careful. But yeah, it definitely puts Remy into a corner that his obsession with food and him wanting to become the best, especially since he's been watching Gusteau's cooking show and he knows about the restaurant. It just becomes apparent that he's stuck in his father's ways and having to help the rats sniff out the poison of foods and eating nothing but garbage and not knowing and appreciating fresh food.
Yeah, I think it's it's very good social commentary, I must say, because I mean, there are families out there who are so I mean, I was very lucky because I'm in a family where my dad allows me to kind of be myself, and has basically instilled like kind of I wouldn't say like liberal values. I would say the to be happy in life and to be able to do what you want, and so it's within reason, and so but there are a lot of families out there who are kind of like in Remy's situation where this is the way things are, this is what you have to do, and you have to basically conform into this, but there is also obviously pushback by this other generation, and so I think it provides I think it provides very good commentary on that part, in my opinion.
No, not only that, but if you remember from like around the 50s and 60s, especially in America, that everything was already pre-made and everything was store-bought, and the concept of freshly cooked foods was pretty much almost non-existent because it was time-consuming and it was kind of like a lost art in a way. And, the likes of various famous chefs like Julia Child was able to introduce cooking in an easier way, relevant again. And then eventually we had the likes of the Food Network, which it couldn't have been a coincidence that this came out roughly around the same time in which the Food Network was already gaining its huge popularity. I remember reading in a magazine a long time ago about how cooking shows were in, about how people would be watching shows like 30-Minute Meals or Everyday Italian or Emeril Lagasse, and about how they would be fascinated by a palette of learning how to cook fancy foods at home, as opposed to like going out into a restaurant or buying pre-packaged foods.
Yeah.
So it's kind of in a way in which, we have this family who's set on tradition eating garbage, and then Remy, who's like the optimistic rat wanting to venture out into the world and experiencing food the way that it should be preserved. And it's actually a really fascinating observation.
It feels really weird, Patricia, because this film actually came out 11 years ago, and it feels kind of weird reminiscing at that point. It feels so far away, but this film for me still feels relevant today. And
I do definitely agree. It still definitely holds up.
Yeah. So Remy dislikes garbage, and so he's saying to his father, "Why are we? If no one wants this garbage, why are we eating it, and why are we stealing it?" And that obviously becomes the differing points of view. And so you can see that Remy is going into the kitchen. He's sort of becoming different from from all of the other members of his family and his friends, and he's starting to. He's starting to watch television, he's starting to read, he starts to kind of develop into, I guess, kind of doing human things. And he gets to a point where he then wants to cook something, and he discovers this mushroom in the back garden, and with his help of Emil, they cook a mushroom cheese with rosemary, and they cook it up on the top of the roof. Lightning strikes, and that's pretty much our first hilarious moment of the film, where basically Remy and Emil are struck by lightning. So
yes. And it gets into our first conflict as well, in which when lightning struck, and then there's like this huge hole, and the old lady discovers that there's like this enormous amount of rats that have been hiding in her house the whole time, and she just screams, and the rats had to run away. And it's like, how would you imagine if you found out after all this time living in your house or apartment or whatever that you live in, that there was like all this vermin living under your nose and you didn't even know about it?
This film is full of shocks, and I tell you what, every single one of them pays off big time. And I tell you what, the old woman actually makes me really laugh, because she reminds me of Elmer Fudd. It's like, because she's there with that shotgun, and she's so trigger happy, and it's so much fun to watch her, and she has that kind of Elmer Fuddness of her, and it's like, be very quiet, I'm hunting rats. So oh, that was wonderful. So she chases out all the rats. The rats go to these pre-prepared boats, which I thought was a bit kind of, I guess they function as this kind of society, I guess, and so they
Yeah,
come
sure.
prepared for like every single possibility, which is pretty
Makes a
interesting.
lot of sense. I mean, we've seen a lot of movies and cartoons about rats and about how they have their own little society. So, I can accept it.
Yeah. When did Flushed Away come out?
Oh, that's a good question. I think it came out like around, I'm gonna guess either 2002 or 2003. Let me just look it up right now.
Yeah, I think because I got thinking that 2006
Oh
apparently it came
wow,
out.
never
Wow.
mind then. Whoops. I'm way off.
Yeah.
So Flushed Away came out a year before
Ratatouille came out. Yeah, that's weird to think about that. So
Yeah, but then again, we've also had like Secret of Nim, An American Tale,
oh yeah,
and that first Titanic movie.
oh yeah, there's those awful Titanic films.
Yeah.
Mind you, I'm really, the fact that Remy is a rat, that's kind of surprising to me because you would think that Disney would look at that and think there should only be like one rodent that's iconic within the Disney franchise. And like you think they do more to protect him than not have another rat and not have another like
Yeah, exactly. I
another
mean,
Matt
well,
or
I guess
Ralph.
it makes a lot of sense because Mickey Mouse is an anthropomorphic mouse that is shaped like if he was like a small person, but Remy is a rat, like a realistic looking rat, and it's done by Pixar. So I guess for some people, it's like, oh, we can make room for more than one rat or something. So,
Yeah.
I'm not too scuffled about it, to be quite honest.
Okay, so the next day, after this has all happened, they have this whole massive chase scene, and apparently there's supposed to be like a reference to Pirates of the Caribbean when they go into the tunnel, because apparently there's supposed to be like this small whisper of when they're going in, and it says "Dead men tell no tales" or something like that.
Yeah, that is a reference to I believe the ride, not so much the movie.
Oh, okay, then that's fine.
Because I've been to the rides a couple of times because I've been to Disney World, and you ride around in like a tunnel like area. You hear the pirates sing. You hear the tale that they say about dead men tell no tales, Davy Jones' locker, and all that kind of stuff. So I guess they're referencing more of the rides as opposed to the actual movies with Johnny Depp as Jack Sparrow.
Mm-hmm. So Remy and his family gets split apart, and Remy ends up having to sail alone on a cookbook which he rescued from the kitchen, and so then he ends up getting lost, and he waits around for them to see if they come back, and throughout that time he ends up looking through the book, and then comes to life our spirit guide, which is a reimagination of Gusteau. Who would, by the way, we've got to mention that, spoilers, Gusteau passes away during the beginning of the film. So then he's basically reimagined in Remy's mind as this kind of spirit guide to talk to when he's lonely. So,
yes, and it's really clever because it's not Gusteau coming back to life. It's Remy's imagination having him as a spiritual guide whenever that he feels lonely or whenever that he feels defeated with various things that are going to happen later on in the movie. So yeah, it's nice to have like a little companion because for the most part, Remy is by himself until he meets up with Linguini. But even then, they don't really talk to each other. They don't understand each other. It's not like in a lot of cartoons in which for some reason, humans and animals can be able to talk to one another. So it actually plays a lot more realistic in that sense. So with the exception of maybe his father and his brother and all the other rats, that spirit is the only companion that he pretty much talks to and interacts with.
Yeah. So his imagination convinces Remy to go up and have a look around, and he does. He goes into this apartment building where he meets up with all these montages, and so he ends up in a party, and he's about to eat something, and this bit actually kind of confused me a little bit because Gusteau convinces him not to eat food, which in his mind, and but Remy says, "Oh, I am hungry to eat something," and you think that as a survival instinct, he would just go, he would ignore what's in his mind, but then he just says, "Oh, food will come to those who love to cook." But it's like, well, if you've got no food to cook with in the first place, how on earth do you, eat? So
Yeah, that is true. That is a little bit confusing. I guess maybe if he would have maybe like been in the kitchen to look for something, or maybe like when the crowds are a little bit more smaller and maybe there's like little crumbs left that somebody dropped, maybe he could have grabbed something. Maybe it would have been a little bit more clever if he snuck around like that. But no, just him being out in the open eating food, and then he gets caught and he just gets chased around. It's like, it's a little bit confusing. It's like, follow your intuition and instinct, but I can't. But try to do it anyways.
Yeah, that was a bit of a weird scene for me. So we get a up reference because what's the dog's name? I completely forgot.
Doug.
Doug may say his first reference indicating what up's gonna be, or the dog at up's gonna look like, and then we get this scene with two people fighting and a gun going off, and that goes into some kind of romantic scene, which obviously I think all of us roll our eyes out, including Remy. So that was pretty fun. And but during this whole thing, the one thing I really love about it is the music. The music is beautiful. And
oh, absolutely, it's gorgeous music, and done by Michael Giacchino, who has done various movies and even some with Pixar, like Ratatouille, and I think he even did Up as well, which is also fantastic music. And let's see, he did Inside Out, he did Coco. So yeah, him alongside with Randy Newman, they're known for doing a lot of great music for Pixar.
Mm-hmm. And they definitely, every single note, in my opinion, was I just love the soundtrack. And I remember when the soundtrack actually came out and I downloaded it. Was my first, when I got my new iPod. It was actually one of the first albums I actually downloaded for it, and I used to play it every time I used to walk back and forth from college. I really loved the sound of it, and so he gets to the top of the roof and he realizes that this entire time he's been in Paris, and the view and the graphics and everything, how it all comes up, you get caught up in the moment. I remember when I saw it in the theater, and I was just really involved in it. And you really feel like Remy on top of that rooftop, seeing out to the whole beauty of Paris. Now, whether Paris is that beautiful or not, I'm not sure. But it was such a beautiful moment to be caught up in. And he's wide-eyed, you're wide-eyed, and yeah, it's a beautiful. It's one of my favorite scenes in the film.
It's really beautiful, absolutely. I love the colors. I love the designs of France. It really makes you feel like you're there.
Mm-hmm. So he finds Gusteau's restaurant, and Gusteau... I love this bit with Gusteau, like, Remy says, "Oh, you've led me to your restaurant," and Gusteau just, "Oh, seems I have. Yeah, here you are." So
I meant to take you there.
Yeah, that's exactly what I needed to do. So Remy gets to see the restaurant operate, and inside it is our supporting character, Alfredo Linguine. And I will tell you what, I thought he was, when I first heard him, I thought he was played by, I've completely forgotten his name. Who's the guy who plays Napoleon Dynamite? I know who you're talking about. Yeah.
It's funny because I actually met the other guy a few years ago who played as Pedro. Let me see if I can remember him, because I do remember.
Was it
John Heder? That's what I was.
John Heder, yeah. I thought John Heder was playing him at one point. I thought, oh wow, they got John Heder for this, but no, it's actually played in house. It's actually one of their guys who plays.
It is not surprising, because a lot of people in Pixar at one point did various minor characters or major characters in-house.
Yeah, Lou Romano, his name is. And so,
Lou Romano.
Yeah, I think he also plays, he plays other characters as well, as well.
I think so, yeah.
Side characters. But yeah, so I'll tell you what, this was interesting, actually, because, obviously, you have Remy, but, the majority of the cast are humans. So you think there would be probably more dialogue related around Linguini than there will be of Remy, for obvious reasons. So I'm really surprised they really went with Lou Romano and didn't try to go with anybody else. So
Patton Oswalt is the voice of Remy, so they could have easily made him as Linguini or something like that, because you're right. It is a movie that is focusing on human characters, which, Brad Bird was the first one who did it in Pixar, because every other movie before that were featuring cars, bugs, toys, monsters, a whole bunch of characters. But then he did The Incredibles years prior, which focused mostly on a human cast. And then he came back a few years later and he did Ratatouille, and it mostly featured a human cast.
Yeah. So Linguini's looking for a job, and he hands our other antagonist of the film, Skinner, who's played by Ian Holm of Bilbo Baggins fame, and he has a mother called Ratana, and she's recently passed away. And I loved how that reveal was brought in. Like Skinner basically goes, "Oh, Renata, how is she?" And Linguini's like, "Oh, good. Well, kind of. It's like, well, she's been better." And then the sous chef comes around and says, She died," and that was just a really good way to to kind of announce that. And he's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." So Linguini manages on that part to get to be a garbage boy in the kitchen, and Remy's just watching the whole thing play out, and so he gets to see all the chefs do that, and then it gets to a point where Linguini accidentally knocks over the soup, and then you can see Linguini trying to put the soup back together again, and Remy's wondering what he's doing, and Gusteau is with him the entire time saying, "Oh, well, as I said, anyone can cook," and Remy's like, "Well, just because you can doesn't mean you should." So, and then Linguini basically demonstrates that pretty well. So
yeah, exactly. Like going back into the Food Network, there's a TV show called Worst Cooks in America. And if you watch that show and you see all the disgusting things that these people prepare, and some in such the most ridiculous ways that they prepare food, like, I'm not even joking. There's like, let's see, there's microwave ramen burritos, cooking a whole chicken in the microwave, thinking it'll be prepared, stuffing it with vegetables, just a whole bunch of and peanut butter chili and jelly spaghetti. It's just so weird. It's true. Like, just because you think you know how to cook doesn't mean that you should. Yeah. And it's apparent that there's a lot of people who really cannot cook for the life of them.
Yeah. So Remy gets really agitated about the fact that Linguini's ruining the soup, and to the point where he knocks himself through the window and lands in the kitchen itself. And I like this bit because it gets to show you through like the whole kitchen and shows you through the dining area, and Remy gets that kind of like that view from it. But he's obviously trying to basically escape and get out before he ends up getting killed. So that's I can see that kind of playing out for like I don't know if this film was released in 3D or not, but if it was, I think that's probably what it was. That the whole scene was kind of somewhat there for. But mind you, it wasn't as apparent as like say for example Monsters vs. Aliens. So
true, yeah, absolutely. But the scene in which Remy recreates the recipe that he remembered of the potato and leek soup is actually one of the most famous scenes in the movie. In fact, so much so that the Ratatouille that is featured and that the movie's named after is just as well known as the soup itself. They actually recreated the soup and the Ratatouille in an episode of Dinner Impossible when they were having a Pixar theme, and they were cooking dishes based off of Finding Nemo, Ratatouille, and Cars, and those two dishes were actually made in honor of the movie.
Mm-hmm. So Remy's about to escape, but then finds the soup is actually making him regurgitate. So he decides to go back and fix it. And mind you, I don't know, this bit felt kind of strange to me because it was like there's this really disgusting soup, and somehow Remy just manages to just throw in a couple of things to fix it. And maybe that's just to show how clever he is as a cook, but I don't know. It just felt kind of weird, really. I thought he had, for me, if something stunk that horribly, I would have started over. But
I would have started over as well. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. But hey, he's more of a cook than us, so who are we to complain?
Yeah, he puts us to shame.
Isn't that great? Isn't that the best thing about Remy though? Is that you can actually believe what the fact that you can see that he's actually wanting so to be desperate in his to become a cook. He's actually believable. And here
absolutely.
About
and the fact that the only way he was able to learn how to cook was from watching cooking shows and tasting the food himself and learning about how food works.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the most important things about being a chef is you need to know about where your food comes from and how properly to prepare it.
Yeah. So this whole montage begins with him making the soup, and then ends with Linguini hilariously finding him before dropping in the final ingredients. And it comes to the point where Skinner storms through the kitchen asking where the soup is, and Linguini catches Remy in a colander, but it's too late to do anything about it and realize. And then Skinner puts basically all the things together and wrongly thinks that Linguini is cooking something. And so he threatens to draw and quarter him and says that the law's on his side. And that bit was actually kind of funny. And then the waiter comes in, takes some of the soup and puts it in the dish and takes it out to the dining room to everyone's horror. And so Skinner comes out to the dining room to basically shouting no, and it's just that bit in itself was. This is the great thing about this. I could probably go through every single time I laughed, and there's just so many of them. And that's the great thing about this.
Legitimately hilarious movie with really funny scenes that it's still remembered in any. If you bring up any memorable moment from Pixar movies, Ratatouille definitely does have a few awesome scenes that people still remember.
Yeah. So the soup ends up in the lap, well, not in the lap, but on the table of a food critic, Celine Leclerc, and she asks the waiter to come back and wants to see the chef, and you think this is the point where Linguini is really going to get his ass handed to him, but in actual fact, she likes the soup, and everyone pats Linguini on the back for doing it. So Skinner's about to fire, Linguini for doing it, but Colette steps in, which is she's the only female chef in the kitchen and cook in the kitchen. Sorry, and she basically says, "How can you fire him when we have to hold Gusto's most cherished belief that is that anyone can cook?" And she pretty much leads the kitchen into keeping Linguini, but ends up herself now having to take care of this basically this rookie that's basically basically taking a bold risk. So,
right, and she's voiced by Janine Garofalo.
Mm-hmm. And that's awesome.
And I did a podcast a few weeks ago about the Fox Animation Studios trilogy, and we talked about Janine Garofalo, and she plays as one of the main characters from Titan AE, and she wasn't really utilized very well. The only thing that she did was that she showed up in a handful of scenes, constantly yelling, and then talking about being pretty angry at one of the main characters, Preed. And then she shows up again in the end, helping with the gunfight against the Dredge. So, yeah, I guess this is a great example on how to take a role and elevate it a lot more, especially since we know that Janine Garofalo can act. It's just that in Titan AE, it was done kind of haphazardly, and with Ratatouille, it's actually done really well. It actually builds a nice relationship between her and Linguini.
This was Janine Garofalo's redemption. I think because from Titan AE, I think this film showcased her in probably the best way. And Colette's is a great character to put her in that situation, and it shows throughout how strong and stern she was and how hilarious she can be at the same time. And
yes.
we're going a bit ahead of the game. Linguini catches Remy, and everyone finds out that there's actually a rat in the kitchen. And so Linguini takes Remy far away from the kitchen so that no one suspects a thing, and is about to throw him in the river. And then I love that. I do like this scene though, because they have this eye contact, and it's like, will he or won't he throw it in the river? But you kind of know he wasn't going to do it anyway. And but it still made you believe it, which was really good. And then Linguini just breaks down and says, "Oh, they expect me to make it again, and now here I am talking to a rat. My whole life's crazy and stuff like that." And she just breaks down and says, "Oh, I really need this job." And so we end up with the situation where Remy agrees to team up with Linguini to recreate the soup and try and save Linguini's job. So
yeah, and he does it by going on top of his head and pulling his hair so that he can be able to use him like a puppet. Just pull one strand of hair, controls his left arm and his right arm, and everybody thinks that Linguini is the one who's doing all the cooking, when in reality it's Remy who's doing all the work.
I'm just really glad they didn't end up with Remy being shoved down Linguini's pants. Let's just be glad that wasn't. I remember seeing that scene.
That could have been the easiest thing to do.
That would have been.
That already is a cliche in itself.
When he lifted his pants up, and you could see his Incredibles underwear, and back in another reference, and you see Remy's face, and he's just like, yeah, do not do this. It's just like, oh god. the whole theater was laughing. I was laughing as well. It's just that was brilliant. And so they burst into before all that happens, they burst into the kitchen, and they don't know what they're doing. And so Remy's biting him every time he makes a mistake, and obviously that doesn't work out very well. And then they're just having this hilarious. This is the great thing about Ratatouille. There's the physical comedy that's involved in it, and it's not really dialogue driven. It's just it's like Charlie Chaplin, and it's like. The comedy is being directed through the motion rather than being directed solely through the dialogue. Yeah, and I think that's what makes it so intelligent as a comedy, because it can be shown on the screen to make you laugh rather than because what's basically the routine is.
Yeah, and I guess they would use this a year later when doing WALL-E, in which they can be able to tell the story through little to no talking and just letting the emotions and the atmosphere do all the work and portraying what is going on.
I'd be interested to see if Ratatouille was an inspiration for WALL-E. The physical aspects rather than the dialogue aspect. I'd be interested to see if that played like a because there's part of me that believes it did.
I mean, it wouldn't be surprised. I mean, both Ratatouille and WALL-E, they came out a year apart, so I wouldn't be surprised that maybe around the same time they were working on Ratatouille, they were working on WALL-E as well, and so they were taking both of those elements and kind of doing something different with it.
Yeah. So they discover that Remy can be controlled by pulling strands of his hair, and I don't know it is done for. I know it is done for comedic value, but there's sort of no consistency to it, because how does he know when to control him walking, and when does he he pulls certain strands of hair and things, and I guess maybe he went through it. Did he go through every single strand of hair to figure out which one controls what?
I mean, they make it look like they've been training like this for a long time. So I guess maybe he pulls in different parts of his hair to control each and every single motion. It's not really explained, but we can assume that that's what's going on.
There's a hilarious piece of fan art with, and it's a bit adult, but it's a Linguini and Colette in bed, and he's got Remy at the top, still pulling strands of his hair, and Colette's just saying, "This is a bit awkward," and it's he's like, "Well, I can put the toque back on," so it's like,
oh,
that's all. Deviant art will never get boring. It will never get boring. But anyway, I think we just kind of skipped ahead a little bit about what was going to happen, but yeah, I think you've already seen the movie already.
Yeah.
So we have that scene, and not the bedroom scene, the scene where we're controlling strands of hair, and so they do that, and they pull that off, and then they can finally make the soup, because they've come to that compromise. So then they get Colette as a trainer, and she starts trying to stab Linguini, which is that in itself is pretty hilarious. And she says, there's only reason why you only see one female in this kitchen because I'm the toughest out of the lot of them, and she basically puts her foot down very quickly. And I do like that. And the one thing I do like about the Linguini Colette relationship in the beginning is that you can actually see it starting to like warm up, and so it's really cold to start off with, but then they start to kind of understand each other as people, and you can tell it's definitely going in that direction of like being this basically shipping these two together. And it's like, and it's actually is one of my if I'd say my top favorite three ships of all time, I think I would definitely have to say Arnold and Helga, Colette and Linguini, and Fox and Crystal from Star Fox video game. And so those are my top three. So so for me, like seeing Linguini and Colette kind of like evolve in this relationship is really fun to watch. And mixed within that is Skinner. It is dangerous that he could become quite forgettable, but then you realize that Remy is still hated by humans and things like that, and Skinner is no exception to that. So he becomes interested that he's trying to taunt him with the rat and that he's still keeping him around and stuff. But then it becomes even more imperative when he finally discovers that the will the will stipulates that if Gusteau has any living children, that the restaurant and the business will be moved on to him. And then we discover that there's a possibility that Linguini could be Gusteau's son.
Right.
Yeah.
And to be quite honest, even though that it is a really huge reveal, it doesn't really play too much in the story. I mean, Linguini never learns about that he's Gusteau's son and that he technically owns the rights to the restaurant.
Yeah, and I just think it's in a way it is kind of big because it's what kind of carried on the story into the second act. But I mean, it's so yeah, for me that was I would say I would accept that as something to drive the story forward. And because I didn't know where else they would have gone with it really to get Linguini into the kitchen, but sorry, to get hold of the restaurant. So and also but kind of Remy in charge in a way.
It's kind of funny because when I first saw this movie, I was thinking, oh, I get it. Maybe Remy sometime in the movie is gonna show Linguini the will that maybe that he is Gusteau's son, and maybe he's gonna try to win back the restaurant, but it doesn't really go into that direction. And I actually give kind of kudos to that because they could have easily played into that trope. It's like, oh, Gusteau is my father and you never told me. So I own the restaurant. You can't tell us what to do, Skinner. And I'm going to let you go because, I own this restaurant now. They never actually play that. And it's actually really surprising.
Yeah, it's sort of implied, which I think is probably better. And
it's implied. It's not like in your face, and which I'm sure that it would have been easily done.
Mm-hmm. So we go through this whole scene, and then we get to actually we actually skipped over a bit, surprisingly enough, and that is Linguini is going to reveal to Colette that he's got Remy on his head, and but then Remy to save the big reveal ends up dragging Linguini into a kiss with Colette, and Colette is about to spray him with mace. And I tell you what, even though I knew that probably wasn't going to happen, I knew that.
She really didn't seem like she was going to be into that.
Yeah, I just thought there is still a possibility that he's going to get a face full of pepper. So, but that didn't happen. So and that's the great thing about Colette was so believable as a strong woman character that you wouldn't be surprised if he ended up like nailing Linguini in the balls or something like that. It's just it was.
Oh, jeez.
It's like, you would expect that. And one little thing I liked about that, after that scene, I love the details they play through this. Where I remember when Colette was saying to Linguini about, making sure you keep your sleeves up so you have neat sleeves, and also you eliminate cuts and bruises and stuff. And even though she says you eliminate the minor cuts and bruises, she didn't have like perfect arms. You can see that she's like scraped herself in places in here and there. And that's what I liked about you can see Pixar starting to get more detailed with the with the graphics and everything, and with the character models. You can see like on her left arm, you can see that she's like got like a burn or something like
Yeah.
that. And I really loved things like that. And
Yeah, you can definitely see about how much the CGI has improved since looking back at Toy Story.
yeah, and after Linguini, Linguini and Colette become official, you can see that Colette's reapplied her lipstick. So
Yes.
I love those little touches, I really do. And
Yeah, those are great.
yeah. So that continues, but then everything seems to be going great. But then Remy realizes that he's starting to kind of lose control a little bit. So Colette suggests using an ingredient that he doesn't want to use, but Linguini takes it anyway, to Remy's disapproval. And then there's a very that's the thing I like about this film as well, that the scenes are so they're so metaphorical, and that they're so they're so descriptive within how you feel about things. So when you got Remy feeling all alone and feeling lonely, like in the sewer, like they really do hammer in how he's kind of lost his way in the sewer, and that he's like on this really wild really wild adventure through the sewer pipes. And they show how dangerous it all is and stuff. And then you have Colette and Linguini on the motorcycle, dashing down the street, and then Remy being left behind. And I love how they use so much iconography throughout through it all. And
Yes.
and that's another thing when the film elements are not just the dialogue, not just the characters, but the actual elements within the film itself, feels on board with the narrative. That's the sign of a spectacular film, in my opinion.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's what we've got here. So Remy gets knocked off the motorcycle. He then basically reverts back to not having a human to control. He ends up basically being a rat again, and he gets attacked in the street and stuff like that. And he has to hide in the sewer. And then it gets even better because, quote unquote, because he's actually found his family again, and he's actually returned to the colony. But he decides he's not going to stay with them, and instead he's going to stay with Linguini. And
and his father is like, "What do you mean by that, son? You belong with us. You belong with the rat family," and he's not interested in staying with them anymore. He wants to be with Linguini, and he wants to fulfill his dreams of being a chef.
Yeah. So then Django tries to scare him into going back and saying that humans are not, will kill you if you try and do anything, and that's just the way things are. And I tell you what, this makes you back Remy even more, because he says that change is nature, and we have to move forward. And it's maybe it's a little bit over optimistic, but I think it just strengthens Remy's character rather than goes against him.
Yeah. And you can understand where Django is coming from, that humans do not like vermin. They are against rats. If you see a rat, especially in a restaurant, then they're going to kill you. They're going to call the exterminator, and they're going to have you dead. So he's really concerned for his son. He doesn't want to be the bad guy in this situation. He just wants to let him know that it's a dangerous world out there, and that the rats have to stick together.
Mm-hmm. So Remy tries to become more human, I guess, and so he ends up coming out of the sewer and giving a human a look, and then they get the scene where that human actually smashes into the back of a car while looking at this rat basically going, "Hey," doing the whole pointing the fingers and stuff, and then he comes back and then realizes that Linguini has been up all night cleaning, along with also being quite hungover as well, and so he ends up having to try and control him, but it doesn't go very well. And
how often do you see in kids movies where somebody gets drunk? I mean, sure, we've had like Dumbo, in which you have the pink elephant scene, and we had Gay Paris, in which we had the scene in which the cats, they drink the wine and they start having that bubble sequence. But I don't think in Pixar we've seen this up to this point.
No. So I really like that. And then we go through that, and we go to the point where Linguini is owning the restaurant, and he's obviously in front of the press, And you can start to see more of the deterioration of the relationship between Linguini and Remy, because so one of the proposals asks, oh, can we, how do you realize about you owning the restaurant? And Linguini says, oh, do you want to know the truth? And he just says, oh, well, I'm a Gusteau and I've just known it this entire time, but gives Remy absolutely no credit.
Yeah.
And yeah.
So we can assume that that's how he was, like off camera. That's how he was able to find out that he was Gusteau's son.
Yeah, but
And it's really sad that he doesn't give Remy any credit. But then again, he would sound like a complete maniac. It's like, yeah, this little rat on my head was teaching me how to cook things.
like,
that would sound really weird.
But here's the thing about it, though, because Remy didn't even want to kind of be found out to begin with, so he already gave Linguini the intention that he wanted to stay hidden. So because he thought if he because you can't blame Linguini in that situation for like saying, oh well, you didn't want to reveal yourself in front of Colette, so why on earth would you want to reveal yourself in front of the press? So you can kind of sympathize with Linguini on that part. So they start falling out, and then eventually it gets to a point where he knocks Remy out of his toga and says, you need a timeout, and that's the end of that. And but then it gets to the point where Remy ends up rounding up all his family to basically raid the pantry and also get all the food, and but then in the midst of doing that he ends up getting caught by Linguini, and then obviously there's that big whole fallout that I don't know, when you say it's kind of, I mean obviously it's 2007, so I don't think that I'm not sure if that cliche had really caught on at that time yet, so but I don't know. How do you feel about the fact that we had this whole, the heroes are falling out and then eventually they'll get back together again,
Yeah, it's already been done to death at this point.
For
but I guess for 2007 standards, maybe it wasn't like showcased as much, especially for like like for what you call it, like a simple kids film. I mean, you would see that maybe in like adult rom-coms or something like that, or at least it's not like a liar reveal.
Mm-hmm. And during this whole situation, Anton Ego finds out that the restaurant has become popular again and comes to visit Gusteau's in quite a very threatening fashion. And I love the back and forth between Linguini and Ego, like saying that you're quite slow for someone who's in the fast lane, and then Linguini shoots back, says, oh, you're quite thin for someone who likes food. And so
right,
yeah, that was a good shoot back. And so there was that bit, and it's so I'm just losing track a little bit. So that happens, and then so you have the fallout between Linguini and Remy, and but then Remy gets captured by Skinner and is caged up, and so at this point, Remy has totally lost everything, at this point, and is looking at the future of doing frozen food, and we get the final conversation with Gusteau, and it basically says to him, "Look, you've never needed me to begin with. In your heart what you wanted to be." And
right.
Yeah.
I mean, technically, he never even existed. It wasn't like he was the actual ghost of Cousteau. It was something that came out of Remy's imagination.
Yeah, I'm really, you've already said it before, but I'm really glad they did that. Rather than basically having it, oh, it's the ghost of Cousteau. It's like, wanting to get like revenge or something like that. I'm really glad they didn't go in that direction. So
yeah, that is true.
Yeah. So Django manages to free him from the boot of the car, and by dropping stone statues on him. And some people are telling me that was a reference to Hunchback of Notre Dame, which which was quite strange, but okay. So
it makes a lot of sense because they both take place in Paris.
Yeah. So that bit happens, and then so Remy goes running back to the kitchen, and Django says, "Well, why do you care if he fails?" And he says, "Because I'm a cook." And so I like that bit. And so the whole kitchen's demoralized at the moment because Anton Ego's about to has walked in, and Linguini's way out of his league. He has no idea what to do, and because he's not got Remy anymore, and then so he ends up basically running into Gusteau's office and basically locking himself away. But then Remy walks into the kitchen, and he's about to get killed by every single member of the of the team until Linguini steps in front of him and says, "Don't touch him." And I felt there was a little bit of a Hey Arnold reference there, a little bit. To 20
Yeah, wait, don't touch him.
Yeah.
Ooh. You have to make him wait a day.
So then the big reveal has happened, and I'm really glad they went with this idea of people just like walking out on Linguini rather than basically trusting him. Because couldn't you have imagined that they would have like gone along with it and said, oh, well, you believed I could cook, so why not believe Remy? And then everyone kind of like said, nodding their heads saying, yeah, let's do it. And then they end up cooking and doing this really good dish, and antics ensue. I'm really glad that they went with the whole thing of like everyone just walks out, and
which is extremely valid, absolutely.
Yeah, and you got the one person that's at one point I thought everyone had walked out, but Colette didn't, and I thought they're going to do the whole thing where she believes in him, but no, she's got tears in her eyes and she can't believe it, and she's really angry about it, and she walks out too. Now, there is one thing I would like to suggest about this. Now, before anyone, has a go at me, I am a Linguini Colette shipper. So, I really do like the idea of them being together, and, I even tried to have a go at writing a fanfiction sequel of them being together. But, I don't know, wouldn't it have been more powerful if, Colette never came back? In the, afterwards? And, like Linguini had literally lost everything. And then the rats had to basically...
That would take some serious balls.
Yeah. Like, I would like to have, seen them, build the relationship up. And, maybe a bit more, and maybe add a bit more, because when Colette and Linguini finally get together in the, somewhere in the second act, it didn't really, they didn't really, gel the relationship. Yeah, they say that, oh yeah, they're definitely together, but it would have been nice if showed a bit more emotion between the two, or they found a bit more trustworthiness towards each other.
Yeah, I definitely do agree. I think that some of the side characters definitely could have had a little bit more development, especially with those two. I mean, you would have really liked to see more of that, or if not, if Colette really wanted to leave, then yeah, it would have been really interesting to find out what Linguini would have been like if he had nobody to help him out in his time of need.
Mm-hmm. And so in a way, for because I like shipping them together, I guess I'm really glad she did come back, and she helped out with getting the Ratatouille ready, and for Ego. And so all the rats come together, and Colette finally comes back after she realizes. So when she looks at the book, and in the bookstore, when she's driving home on a motorcycle, and she sees anyone can cook again, and then she comes to the realization, oh yeah, maybe it's not just humans, anyone can cook, even that rat. And so she comes back, and though surprisingly enough, she thought she thought she's going to be sick before she comes back, and Linguini has to drag her back in before she does, and so how that whole played out, I really loved that, and I'm really glad that she, even though I thought it'd been more effective if she basically never came back, but I'm really glad that she did. So,
yeah, it does leave it much more satisfying.
Mm-hmm. So Ego gets served the ratatouille, and it ends up being the way his mum used to make it, which I thought that was brilliant. I thought.
Yeah, in fact, I think I even mentioned this to you before in one of the episodes of the Arun Meta Show. But when Super Mario Odyssey was first announced, and everybody was looking at the trailer, somebody made a GIF of that scene in Ratatouille in which when he was eating the ratatouille, it reminded him of his mom's. They took the ratatouille and instead put it in Super Mario Odyssey, and then he starts eating it, and then it has flashbacks of his mom of making him the ratatouille, and instead it's Super Mario 64.
That's brilliant. Okay, and so he really loves it, and but Skinner's been watching everything play out for the whole time, and he thought that Remy had been locked up in the boot of his car, and so he eats the ratatouille himself, which he also ordered, and he can't believe how good it is. And so he storms into the kitchen and asks, who cooked that ratatouille? I demand to know. And he sees the entire army of rats. And so he ends up getting locked up in the pantry, and also there's a health inspector who also gets locked up in there as well. And so, there's just so much to talk about in this film. It's like it's just so jam-packed full of stuff. And this is one thing I thought that was going to go against the film. I thought the fact that there's so much in it. I mean, you've got the romantic atmosphere of France. You've got the relationship between Remy and Linguini. You've got, Linguini ex Colette. You've got Skinner. You've got Ego. You've got the all the other characters as well, who don't even get fleshed out that much. They're basically just told, they're just like, they're buccaneers, they're rebels, pretty much. This guy was in the resistance, this guy killed somebody, this guy did this guy did that. And it's just, the one thing I guess I will say is that, the story is quite loaded, but at least it's not loaded enough to the point where, you don't really know what's going on. You definitely get a good understanding of what the main story is and all the side stories around it. So.
Yeah, they kept the focus on what was most important, as opposed to like trying to develop everything equally or having one thing and then 5 minutes later having this other thing and then the previous thing was never mentioned again, and it's just making like a complete mess. So yeah, it's actually a much more coherent story, even though that there's a lot of things going on.
Mm-hmm. So Ego can't believe what he's eaten, and so he wants to, he's absolutely in love with his food, and so he wants to gives his compliments to the chef. But Linguini, he thought he was Linguini this entire time. In actual fact, he's actually been waiting tables during this whole scene on rollerblades of all things. So that's the thing I would have thought about. Like, you're in a 3-star restaurant, I guess. So I guess maybe that is something for maybe leeway. And then he's like, here's the waiter on rollerblades trying to do this whole thing. Like, you wouldn't expect that in like a luxury luxury restaurant in France, but
yeah, exactly. I mean, you would think about something like that in a 1950s diner or a defunct toy store with a panda mascot.
Yeah, gee, I wonder what that's a reference to. But
yeah, I wonder what.
So Colette comes out next, and Ego thinks, she's the chef, and Colette just says okay, if you want to meet the chef, you have to wait for all the customers to go. And so he says, so be it. And so he stays until the very late hours of the night. And then they reveal that this entire time it's been Remy. And they even demonstrate to him cooking the ratatouille and doing everything else. So Ego walks out, says thank you for the meal, and walks out without a word. And I love this bit afterwards because you get to see, Colette and Linguini, rekindle their love. And then you get to see them basically, up all night, not wondering what's going to happen next. So, they're having a sleepless night. And then, Remy decides, I'm not going to go back with Linguini, and I'm not going to go back with my family. And which makes me wonder, well, what did Remy do all that night? Did he literally spend that entire night staring at the Eiffel Tower? Like, just...
Yeah, you have like one of those like dramatic moments in which they're like staring into the abyss, and you have like this dramatic music playing in the background. It's like, yeah, I don't know what I'm doing in my life.
Yeah,
and I would probably be doing something, but I just want to stare out. I'm mesmerized. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so I love this quote for the very end of Ratatouille, and so I thought I'll read it out to everybody, and because I think this from Anton Ego, I think is the line I love throughout the entire lot, and he says this, for the review for Gusteau's: in many ways, the work of a critic is easy. We risk very little, yet enjoy a position over those who offer up their work and themselves to our judgment. We thrive on negative criticism, which is fun to write and to read. But the bitter truth we critics must face is that in the grand scheme of things, the average piece of junk is probably more meaningful than our criticism designated it so. But there are times when a critic truly risks something, and that is the discovery and the defense of the new. The world is often unkind to new talent, new creations, the new needs of friends. Last night I experienced something new. An extraordinary meal from a singularly unexpected source. To say that both the meal and its maker have challenged my preconceptions about fine cooking is a gross misunderstatement. They have rocked me to my core. And that is actually a pretty big statement I think not just for this film, but kind of I guess maybe you and I and everyone else who basically does these types of shows, and yeah, we're pretty cruel with things that are quite average, but at the same time, when something new comes out and is actually good, there are times that people have to step out and definitely defend it. So
yeah, it's true, especially since there's so many people out there that would rather criticize something that is either mediocre or really bad, and then the things that are like really good, it either goes one of two directions. It's either overshadowed by the bad, or it's absolutely praised, and it gets the recognition that it deserves.
Mm-hmm. So that's the review that comes in Ego's column, and everyone is a jubilant, and then the health inspector shuts them down. And
yeah,
you think that would be like the they'd be like a comedic thing that they would do on Newgrounds, like a parody or something like that. But no, that's that's the end of Cousteau's. The health inspector finds out about all the rats and shuts the whole place down. And because of that,
it's essentially like somebody from Newgrounds created this like really hilarious video game parody, and then immediately it gets blamed.
So the Ego loses his job and his credibility as a food critic because he praised a restaurant full of rats. But he's actually now he's now a small business investor, and he's now funding a new restaurant run by Linguini, Colette, and Remy, and known as La Ratatouille. And the ending of this film is very sweet. The fact that they have their own little place now, and Remy now has a place to be basically a cook for humans and rats, and it's a place where people can. It's a very trendy place, and stuff. And, it's like, the ending of this film is really good. And it really definitely leaves it to the point where, you can definitely say it's a happy ending. But I don't know. It does leave me wanting more. I really would like to. If Pixar do a sequel to another Pixar film, I would really love to see them do Ratatouille again.
Yeah, that would be kind of interesting. Maybe kind of find out what the characters are up to. Maybe there's another restaurant that's in competition, or maybe another character we get to see from their perspective. So yeah, maybe as soon as Brad Bird is done with The Incredibles 2, then maybe he can work on Ratatouille 2, which I'm sure will come out in the year 2030.
Yeah, Ratatouille.
You're a genius.
Yeah, it's better than Fan Four Stick, you got to admit. So
True.
Yeah, because I came up with the idea that Linguini and Colette's relationship would be blossoming. Linguini was going to ask Colette to marry her, in at least in my idea of the sequel, and then they'd be competing with like this Chinese restaurant that's like moved in for quite a way, but it's actually run by organised crime. And then out of nowhere, Colette's visited by an old friend from England who himself was what was going to be like some kind of pioneering chef, but then he fell into trouble with the mob and stuff, and so he's been hiding out ever since. And so it's would have been fun. And on top of that, I would have stuck in some a reference to B&L. And while everyone else is enjoying all the food, this character which I created from England likes basically buying supermarket brand basic stuff and just eating and drinking all of that. And so so there'd be B&L branding stuff everywhere, which I thought would be kind of funny. So yeah, so that's everyone should be pretty happy that it just stays as fan fiction and doesn't actually come true. So hopefully Pixar isn't going to be hiring me anytime soon for Ratatouille sequels.
Please hire Arun for Ratatouille.
But yeah, so scores out of 10, I give this a 9. I think while it is my favorite Pixar film of all, it does have its problems, but let me safely say this: everything shines brilliantly. The things that it gets right, it gets 100% right, and so it definitely is one I would, out of all the Pixar films, if anyone was going to watch one, I'd definitely say Ratatouille has to be the one you have to watch. So.
Yeah, I definitely give it a 9 out of 10 as well. If you are a person who loves nice animation, humor, romance, and just if you're a foodie, then this movie is highly recommended to check out. It's actually a really interesting perspective of an unlikely character doing such amazing things and going against all obstacles. And yeah, all the characters are great. The story's great. The The scenes are absolutely beautiful. The music is amazing. Sure, there are a few problems here and there, but it doesn't overweigh the fact that this movie is absolutely incredible. I mean, no pun intended, but no, seriously, highly recommend you guys check this movie out.
Yeah. And so that's another episode of PixMix, done and dusted. And just to let you guys know, if you here in the UK, Coco finally makes its release on 19th of January. So if you're trying to save yourself the spoilers on Coco after January the 19th, you can definitely go check me out. So I'll repost it back up once the release date's happened, and so you can definitely check out there. So cool. If you want to check me out, it's arrowmeta.co.uk. For my website, and if you want to find me on, it's facebook.com/ArrowMeta Show, at ArrowMeta Show for Twitter, arrowmeta.tumblr.com, and you can also find me on YouTube, which is youtube.com/ArrowMeta Show.
And if you want to find out where my work is, you can check me out at oldschoollane.blogspot.com. I'm on Twitter at Patty_B_Miranda, Facebook.com/oldschoollane, YouTube.com/PVM717. I am currently working on a few projects for Manic Expressions Manic Month. Can't say really too much about it yet, but I will be revealing it maybe within the end of the month. And also, I am putting out a poll on what you guys would like to see my next video be. So far, I have top 20 list from pilot to final product on Wild and Crazy Kids, the debut of Heroic Jummer Junk, which is discussing about overlooked or forgotten superhero movies and TV shows and whether they deserve to be forgotten or remembered, and Influential Marvel, which is another show that I want to debut, which is not about Marvel. It's about groundbreaking or influential movies, TV shows, video games, what have you, and what it influenced in our pop culture. So yes, follow me on Twitter, and you can cast your vote. It'll be over in a couple of days, so please let me know what you guys want to see me do next.
Okay, so I'm really excited about that, actually. That's going to be that sounds really cool. Okay, so from me, Aaron.
And Patricia.
Take care, and bye-bye for now.
See you later.